All right, we're live here. Dr. J and Dave Korsunsky, we just finished the Paleo FX 2017. We're just monkeying around with the YouTube live, so we're live in the flesh. Again, no edits here. So off the bat, we wanted to talk about some of the newer devices and newer information we learned this conference regarding ketosis, which is really generating fuel from fat. And again, a lot of people who are insulin resistant and have metabolic issues, generating fat for fuel is such a really interesting concept and point. So we're going to talk about that, and also ways you can chart and monitor your progress in that type of metabolic transition.
Yep. Lots of companies coming on the market making it easier to implement, maintain a ketogenic lifestyle. So there was a lot of that here at the conference, and then a lot of companies make it easier to track your progress over time. So some exciting things we can get into here.
So off the bat, a couple things. There's three mechanisms, or three ways we can chart ketones, right? Ketones are these fat byproducts, right? Beta hydroxybutyrate, acetone, acetate. We can track some of these like the acetone in the breath, so like the ketonics.
Yep.
And again, if you go to headsuphealth.com, there's various ways you can plug in, for instance, your ketonics, right?
Yep.
So that's the breath. You can look at the blood, which is the beta hydroxybutyrate, and you can do that via like the Precision Ultra blood ketone monitor. And there's also ways you can do it via urine, via the keto sticks is the way you can do it. So the cool thing is you can chart those three windows into ketones, and you can throw that into the Heads Up Health application and be able to chart that. And then the cool thing is you can also take separate data like your blood sugar testing via maybe your Bayer Contour or your One Touch, and you can plug that data in manually. And then if you have any additional data that you want to plug in there, like sleep or exercise, or maybe some additional markers like cortisol or insulin, you can create kind of cross variable graphs so you can see kind of how that data is lining up, maybe infer some correlations based off of your diet or lifestyle.
Yeah, I think the main question is, as I adopt these lifestyle interventions, ketogenic being one, is my health improving? And the approach at Heads Up Health is to use data to be able to gather that. You and I have talked a lot that there are individual variances in the amount of carbohydrates that work for a certain person's metabolism. So being able to test 20, 25, 30, 45, 50 grams, see what works best for you. Being able to integrate that into Heads Up lets you look at it visually, and then you can also decide if you want to correlate that with ketones, which can be tracked in Heads Up using blood, breath, or urine. And then most importantly is, for many people, are my markers of disease improving? Are my lipid panel numbers getting better? Are my markers of metabolic health improving? Are my thyroid markers, which you gave talks on in this event, getting better? So being able to put all of the data in one place is, I think, essentially what my company is out to solve. And so there's a lot that can be tracked and applied as you're going low-carb keto.
Absolutely. I gave a thyroid talk on Friday, and I just finished it maybe a half hour ago. And a couple of the things we talked about in the thyroid talk is insulin resistance and blood sugar and thyroid activation and conversion. There was one person that came and saw me that actually had a worsening or an increase in her thyroid symptoms, right? Fatigue, mood issues, cold hands, cold feet, by actually going too low carb. Now I saw other people that actually benefited from that as well, where they actually got better because they were more on the insulin resistant side. This girl was a little bit leaner and more on the insulin sensitive side, and going ketogenic for her actually intensified some of those symptoms. And then she told me that she just tweaked up her carbs a little bit, and a lot of her thyroid, her low thyroid symptoms got better. Now this is great because we can chart this, we can chart our subjective and objective kind of markers there, and we can notice that trend, and that can tell us a lot about our physiology and biochemistry.
Yeah, there's so much individual variance as you go down this path, and we're all trying to figure out the best approach for us. So the data collection is really helpful. You and I both sat in on Rob Wolf's presentation, and he's talking about doing carbohydrate tolerance tests, and he was showing a lot of data from different people where two individuals would eat the same food and have completely diverging results. So one individual's blood sugar from bananas or lentils would go through the roof, and the other person would have a relatively stable response. So there's so much individual variance, and I think that's really the value of collecting data, tracking it, and then finding your own personal sweet spot.
Yeah, I think it's great. Did you want to share some of your experience the last 6 months about kind of going ketogenic and seeing some trends that you modulated and adjusted?
Well, it's been probably a year and a half now, and I've been collecting a lot of different information. I'm actually due to get a complete set of labs done. It's been a while, so I don't have the blood markers to see how those have trended. But keeping a really close eye on fasting blood sugar is one of the most important markers I look at. I think in many cases I could use fasting blood sugar to understand my macros the day before. I don't even necessarily need to use MyFitnessPal anymore. Just using the fasting blood sugar has been really helpful. I've also been testing blood ketones for a certain period of time and understanding which lifestyle activities, which types of exercise have the biggest effect on my level of ketosis. I've also used the breath ketone analyzer. And then equally important for me, I was approaching ketogenic for a general weight loss body composition use case. And so also tracking measurements, which for many people are a better metric than using the scale, because the scale doesn't always move exactly the way you'd like it. And in some cases, as you know from going paleo, you may actually see numbers on the scale go up a little bit when you're making all these really healthy lifestyle changes. But you know for a fact your clothes are fitting better, you're feeling more energetic. So a lot of people on keto prefer to use body tape measurements rather than a scale. So
Absolutely.
I've been starting to look at that. We just built a feature into Heads Up where you can track tape measurements as well. So those are some of the metrics I find most helpful personally. And then of course the lab work, because if you're doing all of this and you're seeing lipid panels that go through the roof, which happens to a very small percentage of people, it's debatable whether or not that's a bad thing. Also being able to look at thyroid markers, incredibly important for me. And is this having a adverse effect on any thyroid related things as well? So those are some of the data points I've been most interested in personally as I've been on the ketogenic lifestyle.
Yeah, and you also mentioned upping your carbs also made a difference a little bit, tweaking it a bit.
Yeah, I'm
Cycling
up
it.
around 50 grams now, and I come back down for a few days, and I'm just fine tuning. I think everyone has to go through their own fine tuning process, and I think you gave the quote in your session today, which was clever. It was, if you're not assessing, you're guessing.
Yes.
So having some data gives me just some ways to cut through all the noise and figure out what works for my own specific body.
Absolutely. And then after I finished my thyroid talk, another person came up and they made a couple of points that when they just upped their carbohydrates just a little bit, they actually noticed a drop in their blood sugar, which is, it's hard to wrap your head around that because you're like, wait a minute, we're upping the carbs a little bit. We see a drop in blood sugar. And part of that could be blunting or decreasing the cortisol response because the body is trying to really ratchet up gluconeogenesis, making glucose from protein essentially. So by giving a little bit more carbs, we decrease the cortisol that may have jacked up the blood sugar even higher without those carbohydrates. That's a really important concept because a lot of people, they may not quite be getting the results on the low carb side, primarily because of gluconeogenesis being driven too high. So keep that in mind. People that are insulin resistant though will for sure benefit their thyroid by going lower carb, at least for a while, for sure, until maybe some negative symptoms come in. But I'm gonna put that talk of the thyroid talk live on YouTube in the next few days. Any closing comments, Dave?
No, I think just to expand on what you said, there's really simple experiments that everyone can do, which is using a simple app like MyFitnessPal and starting to see where you're at and how many grams of carbs per day, and using a simple $20 glucometer from whatever local pharmacy you have, and just starting to test your blood sugar. And that's probably one of the most insightful things that anyone can start to do today, and start to build the awareness between which foods affect your blood sugar, how different macronutrient profiles affect your own personal body. I think it's a valuable experiment that everyone could benefit from.
It's great. We got to head across the street to the speaker's dinner here. It's been great, guys. Look for that thyroid talk and click below, headsuphealth.com. Start tracking your ketones and some of those blood sugar metrics. And again, if you're not assessing, you're guessing. So really make sure you're on track of that. Anything else, make sure you subscribe and share this so we can help more people kind of help basically take control of their health. Thank you guys so much.
Thanks.
Take care.